How to update your Fuji X-T3 version 3 firmware using Windows 10. This is how you check your current firmware. Press and hold the display back button as you turn on the camera. This will now display your firmware upgrade screen. As you can see, my current body version is version 2.10, which will have to be upgraded to version 3. Downloading the Fuji X-T3 firmware from the Fuji support site. Before you download, check your download folder first. Make sure there isn't any legacy firmware update files in the folder. I just googled Fuji firmware update and then follow the links to the download page. Select interchangeable lens camera, scroll down to X-T3, click firmware download, and then I scroll to the very bottom and click on I agree, begin download. I use Google Chrome so you can see the file actually downloading on the left-hand bottom corner. Once it's done, I will right-click and show folder so you can see where it's been downloaded, and I can see the file has been downloaded with a .dat extension. In-camera SD card formatting. So this is to load the firmware update onto the SD card to load into the camera. Fuji recommends formatting your SD card before loading the firmware onto the card and then eventually loading it into your camera. In the past, when I formatted my card using Windows 10 and then loaded the firmware into the camera, it would give me error messages in the camera and it wouldn't upload properly. So what I found was if I formatted my SD card in camera and then used that SD card to load the firmware into the camera, I never had an issue updating my camera to the latest version. To format your card, scroll down to the wrench, user setting, format, and then my card's in slot 1. And then click OK to format the card. Take out the SD card and put it into your desktop or laptop. Loading the firmware onto the SD card. So back on the desktop, my downloads folder is already open. When I insert my SD card into the computer, the folder automatically pops up. In this example, I purposely downloaded the firmware file twice, just to show you if there's a duplicate file, there's going to be a bracket 1 next to it. Make sure you copy the one without any bracket numbers next to the file. Otherwise, when you update the firmware, the camera doesn't recognize that file. So in this case, I choose the 0019.dat. So you hit right click, copy, move over to the SD card, and hit paste. Make sure you don't copy it to the FFDB folder. Before removing the SD card, just confirm that you copied over the correct firmware file and not the duplicate. You can now remove the SD card and insert it into your camera. Loading the firmware onto the camera. Insert the SD card into slot 1 of the camera. Close it up. Hold down the display back button and turn on the camera at the exact same time. The firmware upgrade screen will appear, so you can see it says body version 2.10. Press OK, select body, and it's going to tell you what version to upgrade to from 2.10 to 3. Click OK, and then wait for it to load. So what I did here was I just did a fast forward time lapse, and it took approximately 3 minutes to update the camera. Once it's done, it will say firmware upgrade is completed. Turn off your camera. So you turn off. And then take out my SD card. I'm going to pop in my regular SD cards I've been using to shoot with. Close it up. Now just to double check, I'm going to hit the display back button again. Hold it and turn on the camera at the exact same time. And then you can see that's version 3. And that completes my tutorial. Here are 2 tips for updating your Fuji XT3 Body Firmware. Number 1 is to format the SD card in camera. In the past, when I formatted the SD card using my laptop or desktop and I copied the file over, for some reason the camera didn't take the firmware update and actually gave me errors in the camera. The second is to copy the correct firmware file to the SD card. As trivial as this is, sometimes you're impatient and you're downloading multiple copies of the file and you copy the one with the appended number 1 or 2 to the multiple file name. When you try to update your firmware, nothing's going to happen because the firmware program does not recognize that file extension to do an update on. If you have any comments or questions about the tutorial, please leave comments below. Thank you, and until next time.